everyone, and welcome back to the 2013 Reebok CrossFit Games live from the StubHub Center in Carson, California. I'm Sean Woodland alongside Bill Grundler. The fourth of 12 scored events on tap here as we start our second day of competition. And through 3 events, look who's on top. It's Jason Khalipa.
The comeback kid is at the top. We've never seen that before. Jason always comes from behind, but now he's at the leaderboard. It's top of the leaderboard, and that's amazing.
Event 4 awaits these men. It's the Burden Run.
Stand by, Cat. Go, Cat. Go,
We are underway, the fourth of 12 scored events here at the 2013 Reebok CrossFit Games. It's the Burden Run, and Bill, 4 different things that these athletes need to deal with, and it starts with a 2.1 mile run.
That's right, a 2.1 mile run, and look at how fast these guys are coming out of the gate. But you know what? It's not too far, but it's not too short. You can't conserve yourself too much. Then you got to flip that pig. The pig for these guys is 490 pounds. Looks like a crazy sort of a tire. They got to carry a 100-pound log, 600 yards, and then they got to drag that Iditarod sled that weighs 310 pounds, 66 yards. And guess what? We're doing it in the rain this time, Sean.
The athletes starting on their 2.1 mile run, and Bill running, especially a distance run, and this isn't something would really qualify as a huge distance run, but something over a mile has really been something that's been part of the game since their inception.
That's right. Back in Aromas, you know, they had the hill run, those crazy hill runs that they used to do. And one of the things when we moved to the StubHub Center was that we thought we would lose that aspect of it, but every year they brought it in. 2.1 miles is not too far, but for most CrossFitters, a lot of CrossFitters run, or they do CrossFit because they don't want to run. They think they can just do their 400-meter sprints, 200-meter sprints. This is testing that to see if they've really put that into their workout routine.
So the athletes will make a very large trip around the facility here at the StubHub Center. After they're done with 2.1 miles, they will then move onto the track where they will flip that pig 100 yards. They then pick up a log, run it back here into the soccer stadium, and then strap themselves into a sled that weighs 310 pounds and pull it 66 yards.
You know, going back to Jason Khalipa, one of the things that has always been an issue for him has been some of this cardio, classic running type stuff. Changed that this year. He actually came down through my gym and was going to a wedding and had a rower in his truck broken down just so he could do some cardio work here. He has put so much time into the running. He does 1,000-meter repeats. He actually did a 16-mile run just on his own when he was training for this, so running was not going to be an issue. I'll tell you what, his conditioning has been impeccable so far up to this point.
There's a look at the pack as they come through here on their 2.1 mile run, and it's Garrett Fisher who came in second place overall. He's a rookie, but he's a guy who works out with Jason Khalipa. There's Garrett Fisher with no shirt off in those charcoal colored shorts. Behind him with no shirt on as well is Josh Bridges, someone who has in the past done very well in these types of events.
Yeah, he doesn't have any sort of an issue. The long grinding ones actually work out better in his favor. He's extremely confident in lasting in that pain zone. He can handle a lot of pain, very high pain threshold. But I tell you, impressive right now is Garrett Fisher being out there in the front. Trains with Jason Khalipa, so you know he has a lot of running in there.
Well, Josh Bridges making his second appearance at the CrossFit Games, and coming into this season was one of the popular favorites as a man who had a chance to knock off Rich Froning, who is the 2-time defending champion.
The nice thing about Josh is, you know, they always talk about it, is this a big man sport, a little man sport, is there a perfect size? He kind of throws all that out the window. You know, when he was standing up on the podium with Rich Froning back in 2011, Rich Froning was #1. Basically the smallest other man out there, Josh Bridges, #2. So that kind of throws all that out the window.
And now Jordan Troyan, number 58 in the yellow shirt, the man who won the pool event, now moving past Bridges and into second place. Bridges had a great start, finished 3rd in the pool event, but then in row 1 finished 42nd. But then was able to make up some ground in row 2. He finished 17th. But there's your leader, Garrett Fisher, and just like we saw with the women, we're seeing one athlete really open up a large lead on the rest of the field on this initial 2.1 mile run.
I'm hoping for his sake that he's not getting those first show jitters and just kind of jumping out too fast because it's too easy on this run. If you looked at that big pack a while back, Rich Froning was actually sitting in the back. He realizes there's a lot to have, a lot of work to be done here. So it's not all about the run. Saw that earlier with Samantha Briggs. She had a tough time with that, trying to pull it through, but we'll see if he can hang on there.
The rookie Garrett Fisher, his very first appearance here at the CrossFit Games, has yet to finish outside of the top 10 and currently sits in second place behind Jason Khalipa, the man he trains with on a regular basis.
That's not a bad training partner to have, and I'll tell you what, when your gym has 2 people in the top 2, not too shabby. Not too shabby, Jason.
They are right in our backyard at CrossFit Media headquarters, so we hear a lot about their training regimen, and I don't think there are many people out there who outwork Jason Khalipa and Garrett Fisher and the rest of that CrossFit NorCal crew. So it's Garrett Fisher in first place. Behind him, Jordan Troyan, winner of the pool event. Behind Troyan is Josh Bridges. Lacey Kovacs out of Europe is there, and then behind Kovacs in the dark shirt is Ryan Swabuddy.
I was talking to Jordan Torian at the hotel earlier, and he really likes all these cardio events, and I think we find that a lot with a lot of the swimmers. They can sit in that, and we call it sitting in the suck for a long period of time. They can deal with that. They're used to that. So any of these longer events, he really enjoys that. He thinks that's where he's going to have, have his most success. The issue will be when we get to those heavier weights. That pig is not going to be very light, and so there may be a mix-up there, a switch-up there in the standings for sure.
Yeah, Garrett Fisher also a very fit individual as well. There's Jordan Troyan making his first appearance here at the CrossFit Games, and he is someone who's been competing in CrossFit for a while. 25th in the Mid-Atlantic region in 2011, then finished 10th in 2012, and then this year was able to get himself here to Carson to compete at the CrossFit Games.
He's learning the sport. He's learning what he has to do, increasing every year, and that's what all these athletes are trying to do. It's all about improving your fitness every year. He's done just that.
There's Garrett Fisher. Every hair still very much in place. I can guarantee you that's going to be the case throughout this entire event.
He looks fresh right now, and that's good. Coming into the stadium, he's going to be making his way into the stadium here about halfway through. I want to see if anything changes. So again, we know he does a lot of running with Jason, but I want to see. You can see he's starting to shake his arms out. Maybe he came out a little bit too much, a little bit. He's starting to stiffen up in his shoulders. I want to see what's going to change once we hit the field.
So a 2.1 mile run here in the 4th of 12 scored events at the 2013 Reebok CrossFit Games. And running, again, is something we have done quite a bit in the history of this event.
Yeah, right there. Started in 2007, we had a 5K trail and street run. 2008, there was the hill. There was a big 2-loop hill where we saw Josh Everett run up and just having an obliterated fall coming down. It's a famous video shot that we've always had. And then we went to a very extreme trail run. It was a 7K. I mean, a lot of height, a lot of lows. We had guys actually crawling up the hills just to make it up. It was so steep. But once we left Aromas and we came here to the StubHub Center, they thought that all that was going to be removed. 2010, they swapped it up a little bit. We had a 1.5 mile track run when they did the Double Helen. 2011, they had the beach run. They took them off, brought them down to Santa Monica, had them run a mile out, or 2 different ways on the beach. So 2 miles of beach running there. Last year crushed everybody with the Pendleton run, 11K up and down those hills, and then finally this year we're actually running them out on the street. So running will always be in the CrossFit Games, or at least some sort of aspect in it for sure.
So Garrett Fisher with a huge lead over the rest of the competition, as Fisher will soon make his way into the track and get to work on the pig flip. And let's remember, last year at Pendleton, they not only had to run that distance, but it was also preceded by a swim and a bike on bicycles that did not have any gear, so that was quite a trying event. Jordan Troyan still sits in second place. He is on the left in the yellow shirt, and right next to him, Josh Bridges. And Lacey Kovacs out of Europe behind him. Daniel Tominski, number 53, and Kenneth Leverage, number 51 in the yellow. Wes Pyatt is there. Ryan Swabuddy.
You can see the tempo these guys have. It's comfortable right now, and I think that that's a smart move for these guys. We're sitting at about a 40-minute-ish cap on this, so they know that this is only going to be one segment of this event. They don't want to be blown out when they get to that pig, so they want to stay comfortable. They want to stay calm. But again, look who's coming up into your screen right now. There's the champ and Jason Khalipa, both hanging out back there. I think they want to conserve that energy so they can blast on that pig flip.
Yeah, Froning with the headband, no shirt. He's there with Matt Chan. There's Garrett Fisher. Josh Bridges and Jordan Troyan right behind them. Lacey Kovacs in the yellow, number 30. He's behind Troyan and Bridges. And then Daniel Tominski in the gray top and the sunglasses, number 53. He's behind Lacey Kovacs. And there's a large pack of athletes all keeping that steady pace. Kenneth Leverich, Rob Forte, Wes Pyatt, Ryan Swabuddy in the black.
Coming up there, Josh Bridges. He's been basically kind of touted as the favorite to knock Rich off his throne. It was a big question mark when he wasn't here last year with his injury to his knee. But the fact that he's back with such a vengeance this year is, one, not only impressive, but he's really given that opportunity. I mean, like, Rich is so good, so good. He seems to be the only person coming in that was supposed to knock him off his throne. So it's really interesting to see what he does with this whole thing.
In the middle of your screen is your leader, Garrett Fisher. This is the first of 4 parts of event number 4. It's the 4th of 12 scored events, and right now it is Garrett Fisher all by himself in front. But the pig awaits him and the rest of these athletes at the track. Fisher, one of the younger athletes in the field. He's just 22 years old, out of San Jose, California. But if you heard Pat Sherwood last night on the Update Show talking about this young man, he is a rookie in name only. He is not starstruck around big names. He's used to training next to guys like Jason Khalipa, Neil Maddox. Rich Froning comes through that gym sometimes. Chris Spieler's there as well. So this kid does not have the wide eyes that you would expect sometimes from a rookie who comes and competes next to some of these big names.
Yeah, not at all. He's hit all the big names. So here we are. It's just another day at the office for this young kid. And I'll tell you what, that will do well for him through his CrossFit athletic career. Starting so young and being able to hit all those great athletes, again, it's going to, one, make him that much more impressive, but then, two, he doesn't have that starstruck, shyness.
Past the 11-minute mark, currently in second place now is Josh Bridges with no shirt on, and then behind him is Jordan Troyan. Troyan currently in third. Behind Troyan, number 30 in the yellow, Lacey Kovacs, and then behind Kovacs, number 53 in the gray, is Daniel Tominski.
Right here, all these guys, they know what's coming up. They know what's coming up for them. So at some point, they got to be conserving a little bit. They don't want to blow out all crazy, all their energy here. They have to figure, they got to conserve themselves. But right here, Rich Froning, I just want to say, what is he doing back there? This isn't 11K. This is 2 miles. I'm waiting for him to make his move, and I'm hoping that we'll see something once we get to the pig flip.
The last time we saw Froning, he was in a group of about 4 other athletes, and that group has now thinned out a bit, as it looks like maybe they're starting to pick up their pace and trying to pick up their speed as they make their way to the track. Garrett Fisher's your leader, and you just saw him pass down through the bottom of your screen. And he has a huge lead now as he is making the last final turns here and making his way into the track. First come, first serve to the pig. So he won't have a large distance to cover once he makes that left turn and moves on to the track. He'll take the first pig available, and that's the advantage of being first on the run. You're saving yourself a lot of work later on in this event.
Absolutely. It's, as I like to say, it pays to be a winner. So if you're up in the front, you get your choice. Whether that ends up being a better lane assignment or whichever, you get to choose the tool of destruction you want to use. But these pigs are ingenious. Way back when, I've only seen tires really been in any of the, whoa.
Yeah, Fisher struggling a little bit getting a grip on it. Now he still has plenty of time left, but the more he waits to kind of figure this thing out, the more guys like Josh Bridges and Jordan Troyan, Daniel Tominski, and Lacey Kovacs have to catch up to him. It's a 100-yard flip.
Now this pig, let's just talk about it first of all. It's 490 pounds. It's 5.5 feet long, so it's awkward. It's not a normal tire, so you don't really have the knobbies to grab on, and you can see that he's kind of grabbing off to the side. That's really not putting him in a very advantageous position to get this thing up. The best way to lift a tire is to drive at a 45-degree angle into it with your arms straight underneath, but he's not able to get that position for this pig so far.
So Troyan's lead has quickly disappeared. I'm sorry, Fisher's lead has quickly disappeared as Jordan Troyan has now caught him on the pig flip, as has Lacey Kovacs, and now Josh Bridges to work as well. So all the work that Garrett Fisher put in to get that huge lead on that run has disappeared in a matter of seconds. And now it's Lacey Kovacs out of Europe taking the lead. Jordan Troyan's right there with him. Garrett Fisher falling back in the pack. And now we have a three-way battle for first, and Josh Bridges is threatening to enter that fray as well.
You can see how heavy this is. They flip it one time, they actually stop. And again, this is a race you don't usually see, quote unquote, the fittest people on the planet stopping in the middle of a race, but it's so heavy, and they need to make sure that every single one of these reps actually works. They don't want to try to lift it up and have it fail and drop down. They got to get it over. They got to keep advancing.
Nearly 500 pounds is what they're flipping out there. And there's Garrett Fisher, who got to the track first, but now he's chasing Jordan Troyan. On the left of your screen, in the middle with no shirt, in the middle lane there is Josh Bridges, and then on the right is Lacey Kovacs out of Europe, who's also pushing for the lead. And Josh Bridges really struggling to get that thing up to his shoulder and push it over.
If you look at Jordan's hands right now, he's got some gloves on, and I think for this movement, it's really smart. Grabbing at the side, grabbing that metal, I think having your gloves, having that protection so you're not having to think about any kind of tears or rips on your hands is going to be a huge deal. So smart move on his part.
Lacey Kovacs, number 30. He is currently in the lead, as Kovacs was one of the few men who was towards the front of the pack after Garrett Fisher broke away, and now Kovacs has made up the lead, made up that deficit, and is now in the lead. Past the 15-minute mark here, event number 4, the fourth of 12 scored events at the 2013 Reebok CrossFit Games. We will have 3 each day, 3 today, 3 on Saturday, and then 3 on Sunday. And there is the 2-time defending CrossFit Games champion, Rich Froning.
Now let's look to see if that taking it quote-unquote easy on the run is actually going to pay off for him here, if he can move through this a little quicker and make up some distance. Again, he's a smart athlete. He knows where everybody is all the time. Very competitive, but he's smart. And for being on a younger athlete for the most part, he's very mature in his movements.
So Rich Froning, you saw him take a look to his right to see where the rest of the field is, and now Froning is starting to separate a little bit from the pack, but it's still Lacey Kovacs who's slightly in the lead, and now Garrett Fisher, who's at the bottom of your screen, is still struggling with that pig and is now falling back. So it's great that you lead on the 2.1-mile run, but that's only the first part of this event.
Absolutely. Again, CrossFit is all about being smart and about correct pace for each one. Whether it's a 3-minute workout or a 40-minute workout, there's a correct pace, and all these guys have to be in on it.
So Lacey Kovacs making his first appearance. He won the European Regional in 2012. He missed coming to the games by virtue of a tie break.
That's just crushing. But I'll tell you what, he is an amazing athlete. He actually set a world record doing 1,000 muscle-ups in one day. Took him just over 8 hours, but could you do 1,000 muscle-ups in one day?
I want no part of 1,000 of anything in one day, let alone muscle-ups. That's a special kind of crazy right there. That's Jason Khalipa, who came into the lead after 3 events, and now Khalipa is making up ground, and he finds himself out front, and this is where the more powerful athletes in the field are going to start to really be able to make up some distance.
Yeah, what Jason has is so much strength. You can see him just pop that up with his hips. Again, their backs are so strong. Pops it up with his hips, hits it with his knee, and drives it right over. And again, he's being very smart. Get your 1 rep, sit there, take a rest, not rest too long, but then get it moving again. And he's just consistent. He's not having an issue push that sled around at all.
So Jason Khalipa on the right of your screen. On the upper left is Lacey Kovacs. And Jason Khalipa is the leader here. And he spent a ton of time this offseason working on his running. It's not the prettiest thing to watch, but it's certainly a lot more effective than it used to be.
Yeah, you know, we used to say that him running was basically like a big bull running through a china shop, you know, but he's really controlled that. And for Jason, he's really become a lot more of a finesse athlete than he's ever been before. Definitely brought up his cardio. He didn't want that ever to be an issue ever again, and you can tell right now that it's plain. He's doing exactly what he needs to do.
In 6 CrossFit Games appearances, Jason Khalipa has only finished lower than 7th one time. That was in 2010, so this guy is always towards the top. And last year, he put himself in a hole and then made a big charge towards the top of the leaderboard. Khalipa ended up finishing 5th in 2012, and right now he's pushing Lacey Kovacs for the lead. After the pig flip, They grab the log and they carry that back into the soccer stadium for the final 66-yard sled pull.
It really does have to be a little bit of relief for him, not having to come back from such a deficit, but sitting up at the top. So it's going to be amazing to see if he drops below, since he's starting so high at the top right now.
So Lacey Kovacs trying to keep pace with Jason Khalipa. That is Albert Dominic LaRouche, who is also out front as well. Dominic LaRouche out of the Canada East region. Finished 25th last year at the games. So Dominic LaRouche, somebody now who's been able to make up a lot of ground here on this second part of the 4th of 12 sport events, the Burden Run.
You know, it's not something he just did right there when he stood the pig up on top. Rested for a second. I wonder if he would have had a little bit of advantage if he actually tried to push the top down to get it to slide a little bit as it hits the ground, instead of letting it just stop and rest where it is. A foot's a foot. If you don't have to push an extra foot, I don't want to have to push that thing an extra foot.
Jason Khalipa with no shirt on, he's in the lead. Albert Dominic LaRouche, another pig flip. Closer to finishing up this 100-yard distance. And then Lacey Kovacs in the yellow. Those are your top 3 athletes.
Again, I think a lot of the athletes have brought the tires out of their routine as far as their workout. They'll do it for a strength or more of a skill work. But I think, most CrossFit gyms will have tires, but I just don't think they're used all that often.
At the top of your screen, here comes the 2-time defending champion, Rich Froning, moving himself closer to Jason Khalipa, Albert Dominic LaRouche, and Lacey Kovacs. And the last time we saw Rich Froning look like this on this field is when he was moving another odd object. That was last year at the rope sled event.
That's absolutely right. That was the first time we actually verbalized, oh my God, he actually is mortal. He actually looks tired. These weird objects, they do things, because they aren't the normal things you see in the gym, they affect you differently. But this is what fitness is all about. How can you handle these real-world objects, odd objects? What is your workout doing? So we can throw anything at you and you can be able to handle it fine. We're testing that right now, and it's very apparent if they've been doing these sorts of movements or not.
So Jason Khalipa only has about 1 or 2 more flips to go before he moves on to the log. And then he'll carry that into the stadium, strap himself into a sled that weighs 310 pounds, and then pull that 66 yards. So Jason Khalipa, first done with the pig flip. He is your overall leader. He already has 2 first-place finishes in 3 events, looking to lock up his 3rd and put a stranglehold on the top spot on the overall leaderboard.
Wow, he looks fantastic right now. Now that log that they're picking up is 36 inches long, 12 inches wide, weighs about 100 pounds. It's not like a sandbag. It's not gonna, conform to your shoulder. So it's odd. It gets in the way of your head. Can't necessarily put it behind your back if you want to. It's just really, really awkward. So that's what is going to be testing these guys right now, with how can they hold an odd, awkward object overhead.
Albert Dominic LaRouche is done with his pig flip, as is Lacey Kovacs. So Dominic LaRouche shouldering that log. Jason Khalipa, though, is in the lead and trying to find a way to get that thing in some sort of a comfortable position. So Khalipa started off 13th at the pool, a great finish for him, and then back-to-back first-place finishes in row 1 and row 2. He's in first place overall. He wins this event. We have a lot of events left. This is the 4th of 12, but you mentioned at the top, this is a guy who's used to having to work his way back up the leaderboard. If he's in first place, knowing that we still haven't broken out any barbells, that bodes very well for him. And now Rich Froning is on his log. Froning is one of the men chasing Jason Khalipa. Froning came in 6th place overall with 197 points. So now Khalipa just holding that thing against his neck with both hands behind his head. The key here, do not slow down. Do not stop, keep moving. He'll make his way out of the track, underneath the StubHub Center, and then into the soccer stadium. He's being followed by Lacey Kovacs in the yellow and Albert Dominic LaRouche on the right of your screen. Jason Khalipa, though, still in first place overall as we approach the 24-minute mark.
I think this is so great. Look how he's holding that log. Your body will start to do what it needs to do the work it needs to do. I don't think that you'll see that in any textbook of how to carry an object any sort of a distance. But if it works for him, I mean, he's doing what he needs to do, and he's moving great, and he knows that he needs to keep moving. You know Rich is going to be creeping up behind. Rich right now has already moved away up into 4th position. He has to keep moving.
Jason Khalipa heading underneath, and now it's Marcus Hendren, Rich Froning, Kenneth Leverage was there. So those 3 men trying to chase down the overall leader. So Rich Froning started off with that 30th place finish at the pool, but then familiar territory for him. He finishes 2nd, he finishes 6th. And Froning is a guy who's one of the most consistent, most talented athletes that we've seen. And the longer this competition goes, the better it's going to be for him. But he has to start finishing ahead of Jason Khalipa. Now, Marcus Hendren, a guy who spent a ton of time on the farm, used to doing grunt work like this, keeping up a pretty good pace with that log across his shoulders.
I think of anyone on the field, he probably has the most experience with something like this, getting up over his head and moving around that like that. He's the only one that we can see really running, and I know Marcus really wants to put a stamp on, hey, you know what? I didn't just luckily make it here. I'm here to actually do something. I'm here to get on the podium. I'm really anxious to see what he can do with all of these odd objects. The sled, he did great on the flip. Now, moving that log, he's doing amazing right now.
So Jason Khalipa using both hands to hold that log against his neck, and now Lacey Kovacs shifting that log to his left shoulder, and then Albert Dominic LaRouche going to a similar grip as Jason Khalipa was. Behind him is Simone Paquette out of the Canada East region, and he's going with that 2-handed grip as well. So a lot of different techniques here.
You know what? I'm going to have to go with Jason's on this one. I like that. It'll sit behind his back a little bit. Sure, it's a little awkward, but it's sitting. He looks more comfortable to me there than the other guys. Look where their heads are all cocked off to the side. I just think it's going to be way more awkward.
Khalipa looked like he might be struggling just a bit there as he made the turn underneath the StubHub center here, but he still has a pretty good grip on that thing. He'll make a right turn and then head into the soccer stadium, and from our vantage point, we can see the fans start to come to their feet here, anticipating the arrival of the first athlete, Jason Khalipa, your overall leader, and threatening to rack up yet another first-place finish.
He is absolutely crushing right now. I'm so impressed with his endurance. What he did in his training is setting him up for perfection right now, and that's exactly what he was hoping for, and it is working.
So Jason Khalipa, the final stretch here before he will emerge into the soccer stadium. First come, first serve to the sled that weighs 310 pounds. Khalipa will strap into that, and he has to drag it 66 yards to the finish line. And here comes Jason Khalipa.
Now, he was moving great, but you know what? The nice thing about this log, as awkward as it was, I think it really gave his legs and his hips a little bit of a rest. It was awkward maybe his low back, but now he gets to drive. Time to put the head down and just drive and bring this thing home.
So Khalipa still has plenty of a lead here as he puts the straps across his shoulders. And here comes Rich Froning, Austin Malialo, and Kenneth Leverage. So Froning is making up ground. He's making his way underneath the StubHub center. Meanwhile, Jason Khalipa, as Lacey Kovacs comes through, he is currently in second place. Khalipa is ripping into this sled and chewing up real estate on his way towards the finish line.
The hardest thing with this sled is it's all about staying. You got to keep moving. When you stop, you have to restart every single time. And 310 pounds on one, it was just raining, so the grass is wet. So his foot, the fact that these guys don't have cleats or doing it just with their regular shoes, that's going to be rough. But he is driving this thing home right now.
Lacey Kovacs has now made his way onto the field, and he'll try to catch Jason Khalipa. But Khalipa is a man possessed in this event, and he is almost past the midway point here. Now he is, but he has slowed down a little noticeably here. And here comes Lacey Kovacs getting ready to get his sled. And he's not going over his shoulders. He's actually has those loops in his hands, and we saw some of the women do this. He's shortening the distance that he has between himself and that sled. Meanwhile, Jason Khalipa with about 20 yards to go, 25 yards to go before he crosses the finish line. But Lacey Kovacs is chewing up some real estate as well, as his legs are churning, trying to close the distance between himself and Jason Khalipa. And look at the look of anguish on Lacey Kovacs as he is putting everything he has into that sled. Albert Dominic LaRouche is there. Dominic LaRouche now moving very well, and he is going to pass Lacey Kovacs. Jason Khalipa, meanwhile, is resting. He has plenty of time here. but he's back on the sled. Khalipa on the left of your screen. Jason Khalipa, he's already won 2 events. He could have number 3 under his belt here in just a few moments.
Absolutely incredible job how he's doing. He's killing this event.
Jason Khalipa is across the finish line. 3 straight wins for Khalipa. Now Ben Smith is in second place. Smith out of nowhere as Jason Khalipa is catching his breath. But Ben Smith is now stopped, and now we have a battle for second place. Ben Smith trying to hang on. Smith, arms churning, just working as hard as he can as he makes his way towards the finish line.
He came out of nowhere behind everyone and moved himself up into second place. Absolutely crushed on the drive.
Ben Smith across the finish line. Smith, a time of 29:46.2 seconds. He will finish in second place.
Wow.
Now Daniel Petro is across the finish line. Petro in third. This is a guy who did very well in the pool event as well, so he's establishing himself as a contender. Now Simone Paquette, he is across the finish line in fourth, but Ben Smith with a second place finish. Smith was on the podium a couple years ago at the CrossFit Games. He finished 11th last year, looking to get himself back into the top 3. And now Rich Froning struggling with that sled. He has a couple of competitors ahead of him, so Froning has yet to win an event, and it's not going to happen here as Jason Khalipa is going to increase his lead over the 2-time defending champion. Now Froning is back into the sled, trying to make his way across the finish line. Rich Froning giving this all he has. Garrett Fisher there as well, and Fisher may have actually passed Rich Froning. We'll have to wait, and he did. Garrett Fisher by a 1/10 of a second over the champ.
Right there, Rich is actually fighting to get across. Look at him battle just to get across the line.
Rob Forte, Rich Froning, Albert Dominic LaRouche, they are all across. More and more men emptying the tank here in the final minutes of this event, and they are just collapsing as they cross the finish line.
What I will say is you can see the difference. You know these guys are dragging sleds in the training because look how efficient and how fast they've moved at. These are not light, 310 pounds, and they all basically crush this across the field. You can see the difference in the pig flip though, or carrying any kind of heavy weight. This right here, something they were used to.
Meanwhile, Marcus Hendren is in. Lacey Kovacs finishing 10th. Kyle Kasperbauer finishing 11th. And then Jordan Troyan finishing 12th. Now Tyson Takasaki out of Canada West. He finishes 13th. Wes Pyatt finishing in 14th. And Josh Bridges in 15th place. So Bridges digging himself a hole that he's going to have to climb out of if he wants to wind up on the podium here at the 2013 Reebok CrossFit Games. That is Frederick Agidius resting and trying to get the sled moving again. And now Z.A. Anderson is in. Neil Maddox has finished as well. So a lot of the big names have finished, but still a lot of big names out on the field. We're past the 32-minute mark.
I'll tell you what, you talk about a true test of fitness. Now granted, it wasn't a very high intensity workout, but the absolute onslaught of just muscular endurance that went on with all 4 of these segments of this event was impressive that all these athletes were able to get through.
Kenneth Leverage is finished. Miko Arompa is finished. Frederick Agidius struggling to get across the finish line. 19 athletes have passed the finish line, and Frederick Agidius will make it 20. Next to him, Travis Mayer. Matt Chan, the second place finisher from 2012. He was the oldest man to ever stand on the podium last year. So Matt Chan, Roy Gamboa next to him in the headband, and then with his hands on his knees with the red headband is Dan Bailey.
And you know what? I would not have expected these guys to be back this far. I thought for sure Matt Chan would have been able to drive the sled and been up at the front.
Brian Miller, Chad McKay are both finished. McKay was a guy who did really well last year in Pendleton. He actually won Pendleton 2, the distance event, one of the bigger athletes in the field. Matt Hathcock finishing 25th, 33:21.6. Bailey, Bartow, Chan, Marcus Philly, Zach Forrest, Roy Gamboa, all still out on the field. Matt Chan chugging his way towards the finish line.
You can hear how hard this is. Listen to him. You can hear him grunting from here.
Chan is in 33:51.6 for the second fittest man in the world from 2012. If we've hit the 34-minute mark, Asia Bartow is still out there. Austin Malialo right there. Taking a break, Garrett Fisher, hair still very much in place, cheering on Malialo. That's incredible. That guy's hair did not move, Bill.
You know, it's a young man thing, I think. You know, a lot of good hair products. You know, a lot of good hair products.
Froning and Khalifa all there trying to cheer on Austin Malialo, who's struggling to move that sled. Malialo, 5'5", 175, so he's given up a lot of pounds to that sled. Asia Bartow now getting ready to come across the finish line. Bartow now is in, as is Roy Gamboa. Graham Holmberg is also finished. The 2010 Games champ, Graham Holmberg, across the finish line. And now here's a surprise. That's Scott Hanchik.
Yeah.
Scott Hanchik now across the finish line. He finishes 30th. Alex Nettie out of the North Central region finishes right behind Panchik. Panchik was a name that was being thrown around a lot as a guy who could possibly beat Rich Froning as well.
Absolutely. You know, he's done so well. He's made such a good name for himself. You know, beating him in the open, beating Dan Bailey in the open event, and really showcasing what he has. And I was honestly expecting, being on the field, being a football player, and having that background, that he really would have been able to drag that sled a lot easier than what he did.
Eric McGee has also finished. So the athletes who have finished have now returned to the field, and they're cheering on the men who are still battling this 310-pound sled. This is the fourth of 12 scored events here at the 2013 Reebok CrossFit Games, the Burden Run.
You can see Daniel Tominski right there. He just wants to get to the end. He's so close, but that distance is so far away.
Orlando Trejo, one of the few men who have yet to strap himself into a sled. Trejo on the log and moving his way underneath the StubHub Center and onto the field. And now Dan Bailey is getting ready to finish. And Dan Bailey coming across the finish line in 34th place. Zach Forrest, the former Navy SEAL, with that log on his shoulder. You know he's messed around with that before in his military training, but Gary Helmick finishing, and there's Dan Bailey trying to catch his breath after a grueling event here to open the weekend at the StubHub Center. We said it with the women and we'll say it with the men. Bailey and the rest of the men out on this field are elite athletes, either the most fit human beings in the world, and it shows you just how difficult this test is for them.
I think that's what's so impressive with this test. Dave Castor, the director of training, he always has a demonic way of putting movements together, and this was perfect. It was long, it was heavy, it was odd, and it was difficult. So it really is testing what is their training and the workouts doing to prepare them for anything. Were they ready for something like this? You can tell the athletes that were. You can tell the athletes that have been dragging sleds, have been flipping tires, have been running, and it showed. It showed.
Jason Khalifa and Ben Smith out there cheering on their fellow competitors. There's Austin Malialo churning his legs and finally making it across the finish line. So Malialo finishing 40th. David Levy is in. Mike McGoldrick also finished, as did Brian Swabode and Marcus Philly. But here are your top three. Jason Khalifa, his third straight event victory and another $3,000. Ben Smith will finish in second, and it's Daniel Petro in third. So Jason Khalifa on top of the leaderboard through 4 events. And if you're not named Jason Khalifa, that means trouble. And Lucas Parker now across the finish line. Parker has had a very slow start to his 2013 Reebok CrossFit Games, signing his scorecard. Lucas Parker was a man who we thought would be in the top 10 by this point. But now he has a lot of work left. He's going to fight his way into the top 15. let alone the top 10. That is Brandon Swan. There's Zach Forrest making his way onto the soccer field. And Zach Forrest, because he's one of the last athletes on the field, has a long way to walk with that log before he can get into a sled.
Yeah, that's what you don't want to have happen. Let's add insult to injury. You have to carry that log all the way to your number, and he's got to go to the furthest number right now. That's not what you want to have happen.
And that is a long way to go for Zach Forrest. Orlando Trejo from the Latin America region. Michael Mogard, the former Iowa Hawkeye, he's out there as well. And Zach Forrest, 39 minutes have gone by here. Brandon Swan now across the finish line as Josh Bridges is trying to give some coaching tips to Orlando Trejo.
They talk about it all the time in CrossFit, that your rivals are your buddies, they're your cheering section, and that's what happens here in these games. You'll get these guys that finish up ahead of you, and they come and tell you how to hold the straps, how to drive from your legs, what to do right to get yourself in there, because you know what? They all know what it feels like. They all know the pain, and we all want everyone to be able to finish these games.
That's David Levy out of Africa, who continues to catch his breath after this event. Orlando Trejo is another one of the small athletes in the field. He's just 5'3", 158 pounds. So he's basically pulling twice its body weight here in this event. Next to him is Josh Bridges cheering him on. And we have now reached the 40-minute time cap. So Trejo, Forrest, and Mogard, the only three men not to complete this event inside the 40-minute time cap. But it's that man, Jason Khalipa. Another victory.
I tell you what, he is impressive this year. Impressive. I wasn't expecting the swim to favor well in him, you know, and that was okay. But when you win the next three events, not too shabby.
So in third place, a man who came out of nowhere, Daniel Petro.
You know, again, just nice and consistent, kept on moving, but where he made his attack was on the field. He drug that sled, no problem at all.
So Petro locking up a third place finish. In second place, another guy who made a big comeback. It was Ben Smith. Didn't talk about it much on the pig, but when he got to the sled, that's where he made up his ground.
You know, I think he just hung back to where he needed, but look at the drive. He got in there and went for it. Just absolutely annihilated the ground, just hammered through there.
And finally, in first place for the third straight time, Jason Khalipa, who took the lead on the pig and then never looked back.
We got to come up with a new name. Can't call him the comeback kid anymore. Look, I mean, great movement, smart with the log, and really hammered the sled. He had enough of a lead that he actually could take enough of a breather to get through it the way he did.
So Jason Khalipa, his third straight victory, 100 more points and $3,000 more. Let's send it down to Miranda Oldroyd.
Your top 12 athletes as it shook out during the Burden Run. Jordan Troyan in 12.
All right.
Kasperbauer at 11.
We've got our top three finishers over here, Larry. We're going to give them their awards for finishing in the top three in this event. In third place in the Burden Run, with a time of 29 minutes and 53 seconds, Daniel Petro, earning $1,000 for that third place finish. Winning $2,000 in second place with a time of 29 minutes, 46.2 seconds, your game's veteran, Ben Smith. And with a time of 28 minutes, 58.2 seconds, for the third time in this year's games, he's your first place finisher, winning $3,000, Jason Khalipa.
So Jason Khalipa, unfamiliar territory for him to start a competition. He remains in first place with yet another win. Ben Smith comes in second. It's Daniel Petro in third. Rich Froning, the two-time defending champion, another top 10 finish. He is in seventh place.
You know, that's what Rich needs to do. As long as he stays consistent, stays up at the top, you know, he knows he'll get to the podium. But Jason's going to be tough to beat with all his first places.
4 events into the competition, 8 to go. That man, Rich Froning, trying to chase down Jason Khalipa, who has a stranglehold on the top spot. More from the StubHub Center when we return.